And I'm now calling to order this meeting of the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging. My name is Carolyn Sutterfield. I'm the chair of the commission. I want to welcome attendees. We will not be seeing you or hearing from you during this time unless you want to participate in the public comments section, at which point you would be welcome to turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and I will call on you if I see your face. And you can use the reactions button at the bottom of the screen to hit raise hand so that I'm sure to see you and call on you. Otherwise, we'll ask you to sit quietly and observe, and I hope you enjoy the meeting today. There would also be a chance if any of you have an announcement to share with the group at the end of the meeting. I will also ask if there are announcements. So let's begin here. And as usual, during the pandemic emergency, which is not completely lifted for us, I have to go through a script to conduct this meeting wholly electronically in accord with the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA. The Fairfax Area Commission on Aging needs to establish 3 findings and determinations for the record. This procedure calls for 3 separate motions and votes of the commission. Number 1, audibility of members' voices. First, because each member of the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum is participating and that each member's voice is audible, clear, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. I will conduct a roll call and ask each commission member participating in the meeting to repeat your name, your district, and the location from which you are participating. Please pay close attention to ensure that you are able to hear each of your colleagues. Following the roll call, we will take a vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I will begin with myself. Again, I'm Carolyn Sutterfield, representing the city of Fairfax, calling from my home in the city. Tom?
I'm Tom Bash. I represent the Springfield district, and I'm calling from my home in Springfield.
Mike?
I am Mike Perrell, representing the Braddock District. I'm calling from my home in the Braddock District.
Diane?
Diane Watson, Mount Vernon District representation. I'm calling from my home in Lorton, Virginia.
Kathy Muha?
Kathy Muha, representing the Sully District, calling from my home in Oakton.
Kathy Cole?
The at-large commissioner, calling from my home in Springfield.
You got to say your name too.
Oh, sorry, Kathy Cole.
Thank you.
You just did.
Okay.
Kay Larmer, I represent the Drainsville District. I'm calling from my home at River House in Stafford County.
Hey, Kathleen Hoyt, I can see your name, but I cannot, but you're muted and I can't see your face. Are you able to unmute and sign in here? Kathy Hoyt, can you hear me? Well, I'm gonna have to get back to
Here I am. I'm here.
it. Okay.
Hi,
Thank you. Say your name and your district and where you are calling from.
Kathy Hoyt, representing the Mason District, calling from Lincolnia.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now pass the virtual gavel to the vice chair and make a motion. I move that we have a quorum present via remote connection and that each member's voice can be adequately heard by each other member of the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging. That's the motion, and Mike will now hold the vote.
So is there a second for that motion? I see Kathy Cole's hand up first. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Thank you. Second, having established that each member's voice can be heard by every other member, we must next establish 4 points: the nature of the emergency that compels the emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to the meeting. So here is the motion. I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that therefore, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling toll-free 888-270-9936, conference code 231525. That's the motion.
Okay, is there a second for that motion? I see Diane Watson's hand up.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, any opposed? The motion passes.
Okay. Finally, I move that all matters addressed on today's agenda address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Fairfax Area Commission on Aging's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. That's the motion.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I-
Who do I see? See, I think I saw Kathy. Okay, let's give Kay a chance. Kay Larmer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, let's jump into our meeting now. So we have, first item is review of the agenda. We noted that yesterday's meeting of the Older Adults Committee of the Board of Supervisors was not included under old business. So I'm going to add that we ask that we amend the agenda to include that as the first item under old business. Do I hear any other additions to the agenda or changes? No. Do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Micah, and a second for that motion? Diane, I see you.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Oh, the ayes have it. The agenda is approved as amended. Next is approval of the minutes. You have the minutes from our meeting in May. Did anyone see any additions or corrections to those minutes? I didn't. I'm usually the one who does. So they were very good minutes. Thank you, Kathy. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting?
I move.
Kathy Cole moves that, and a second, please. Okay, seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Good. This is now our public comment time. So if there's anyone who has joined us, and I don't think we have a large group today, but if anybody has come prepared to make a comment, this would be the time to turn on your camera and raise your hand in the reactions, and so that I could see you. And I don't see that at all, so I will keep going. We're ahead of ourselves a little bit, which is good because our guests today will need to leave us. So I think we'll just jump right into our presentation. We are joined today by Judy Cabelli of the Affordable Housing, the Director of the Affordable Housing Development Division for the county in the Department of Housing and Community Development. And Judith is going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is the availability of more affordable housing. Take it away, Judith.
All right, thank you very much. Do you all hear an echo?
Yes, we can hear you. I will ask the commissioners please to mute themselves now until we have a question time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you all today. I'm heartened by your interest in the Community-Wide Housing Strategic Plan and your interest in affordable housing. As Carolyn said, I'm Judith Cabelli, the Director of the Affordable Housing Development Division for the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm really excited to share with you where we are with our Community-Wide Housing Strategic Plan and to have the opportunity to share with you about our housing vision and to learn from you all what some of your expertise about older adults in Fairfax County. So developing a strategic plan for housing countywide was really an essential step for the Fairfax County community. It enabled us to partner with the community to create a shared vision of housing throughout the county. We know that housing supports local economic growth and community sustainability. Importantly, housing is fundamental to the principles of One Fairfax, which is our racial and social equity policy. And through this housing strategic plan that we developed, we were able to quantify the housing needed in a way that allows us to plan for the anticipated future growth so that we're able to support the county's economic sustainability. The plan was able to set us up to successfully develop specific, measurable, and actionable strategies so that we can meet countywide housing goals that we were able to set in this countywide strategic housing plan. So in this community-wide housing strategic plan, we identified the program, policies, and specific funding sources that are required to address these housing needs in the upcoming years so that we can meet these projected countywide projected needs for housing. So there are a number of different plans that are relevant in creation of this affordable housing plan. What's really important to us is so that we can understand and integrate these appropriate different plans throughout the county. So the county developed a strategic plan to facilitate economic success. We also have a human services need assessment as well as the One Fairfax resolution. These all separately speak to the need for what was integrated into our community-wide housing strategic plan. What was spoken to in the 2015 strategic plan to facilitate the economic success was the economic viability of Fairfax County and how that is truly at stake. The lack of a range of price appropriate housing in the county and how that hinders full implementation of the county's One Fairfax policy is something that so in this policy, we really call for equitable access to communities of high opportunity. And so integrating all of this into one community-wide housing strategic plan is able to integrate all of these different plans into one place. So I understand that there's a timeline to develop the Shape the Future plan. And I believe that I hope you all will agree too, that ensuring our plans are aligned will be really important. So having what we call price appropriate and age appropriate county is an essential component of equity in the One Fairfax policy, as I mentioned. Typically, price appropriate housing is housing in which a household pays no more than 30% of their household income toward housing expenses. And this is true for a household, no matter what income level that household has. Research has consistently shown that having access to stable and affordable housing in a safe neighborhood is associated with more consistent school attendance and better academic performance for people who have kids in school, better physical and mental health for children and adults of all ages, less stress for parents, for older adults, increased likelihood of upward economic mobility. The bottom line for what we know is that price appropriate housing leads to stability for any household. Regardless of the age or stage of life, it can lead to community-wide stability because that household has the ability to be stable on their own. So by providing housing that's affordable and appropriate for individuals and families of different backgrounds, our county is able to ensure that we have equitable access to opportunities and services, regardless of race and economic status. Communities in which everybody is able to prosper and everyone can benefit from a diversity of interests and assets is very important. And this is what having price appropriate and age appropriate housing can allow us to do. Anna Ricklin, who is our Health in All Places manager for the health department, talks about the intrinsic relationship between housing and health and how health impacts the built environment. So one way that this is really important is that when a household is able to live in a price appropriate housing unit, that often leads to the household being able to afford other basic needs. So those basic needs such as food and medical expenses, which of course, as I assume you all know, is very important for aging adults. We also see that healthy housing can improve respiratory health, maternal and child health, mental health, as well as many, many, many other health impacts. So we see a lot of hard data and anecdotes from businesses and workers that demonstrate that more housing options at all price points helps people to be able to live and work in the community, which leads to shorter commutes and less traffic, which, as we all would agree, benefits every single one of us who lives in the county. It also makes it easier to attract and retain workers. It reduces income segregation, which is associated with slower overall economic growth, and it broadens the county's tax base. When we talk about housing affordability, we often use the term area median income, or AMI. So in the DC metro area for 2020, the 2020 AMI for a 4-person household is $126,000. In an affordable housing community, AMI is what indicates who qualifies from an income standpoint to live in a community. So that's typically the standard, whether it's a community owned by the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority. So our housing authority, which is associated with the Department of Housing and Community Development, or whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit company that has affordable housing units. They typically use that standard. The low-income housing tax credit program, you may have heard them referred to as LIHTC as well, is one of the really important tools that provides housing affordability. And so these LIHTC communities also use these AMI thresholds for people to live in those communities. So if you look at this chart, you can see as an example, a household with 2 persons at the 60% AMI, that income maximum is approximately $60,000 per year. And the maximum rent that can be charged for that household to live in a 2-bedroom apartment is approximately $1,700 a month. The market generally does not provide housing at these income levels naturally. And for our aging seniors, this is really concerning. So as I mentioned previously, it's really important for our healthy economy, as well as for the health and equity of our residents to be able to have housing affordability at these lower income levels throughout the county in all parts of our county. So we know that the cost of housing is rapidly increasing while income remains stagnant for people who are employed. And as you know, income is often fixed for our aging adults. We know that thousands of county residents spend more than half of their income every month on housing, rather than the 30% that they should be spending toward housing expenses. This is a major concern for our families, for our individuals, and for our seniors. When housing costs increase, families have less money to spend on other necessities such as food, healthcare, transportation, childcare, and education. Our seniors have less money to spend on food, healthcare, and transportation. And all individuals in the county then have less money to spend on other goods, services, activities, and things to do throughout our local economy. So as you probably already know, we have a critical housing challenge in our county, just like much of the country. Here in Fairfax County, our studies show that we need 15,000 new homes at 60% of the area median income and below by 2034. Our senior households present the second greatest need for more housing behind small family households and single individual households. As housing costs increase, more senior households are likely to become cost burdened or more cost burdened than they already are, since many of our senior households are already on relatively fixed incomes. We know in 2017, our senior households that had ages 65 and up were approximately almost 20% of all households in the county. And it's projected that by 2032, about 24% of those households will be, of all households in the county, will be 65% and older. And it's estimated that 23% of those households, so 23% of the 24%, will be senior households. I'm sorry, will be households that have low income. So that's a pretty substantial population of our senior population that will have low income by 2032. Prior to COVID, we knew our rents were rising and income was staying stagnant, and this challenge is only becoming a bigger problem at this point. Let's see. So to tell you a little bit of this, I've told you about our challenge, and we've recognized the importance of housing affordability for all, and we are really taking intentional steps to work to achieve equity and to ensure access to price-appropriate housing for individuals and families at all income levels and at all ages. What we're doing to intentionally address these known housing needs in the county is the first step, as you know, and that I've already mentioned a couple of times, is the development of this community-wide housing strategic plan. And this plan was developed in 2 phases. So phase 1 identified 25 short-term strategies that were really already implemented for the most part without major policy changes or significant sources of new revenue that started the process of creating more housing options. This included modernizing FCRHA and housing and community developments, administrative processes and procedures, land use and zoning tools, funding sources and uses, housing for vulnerable populations, and things like that. Phase 2 for the plan, which was developed after the board approved phase 1, included longer-term strategies to develop new tools, policies, and resources to support production, preservation, and access to housing that's affordable to all who live and work in the community. And importantly, as part of this, the community-wide plan identified 2 key goals, one for production and one for preservation. So the new production goal is to produce a minimum, and this is very much a floor, not a ceiling. So a minimum of 5,000 new affordable housing units by 2034. And our preservation goal is to preserve, so no net loss of affordability of our existing market affordable and committed affordable units. So this is on the screen, just sort of the structure of the Affordable Housing Resources Panel. This is really what phase 2 was. We convened a panel, which I think 2 of your members were on, that made recommendations to the board in 2019. Their recommendations were structured in 5 strategic areas. So this is where the goal for the 5,000 new units came from, the recommendation for an additional penny on the real estate tax for that new production, looking at co-locating county land with the development of affordable housing, as well as looking at vacant land to see what we could use to build housing on, looking at our land use policies and regulations. That concept of no net loss was reaffirmed as part of the preservation piece of it, prioritizing using that existing half penny that we've had for a long time for preservation. The institutional capacity piece, that's me. I started in February of 2019, just before the pandemic. My position and division at HCD are new. The position, I'm the first person to have this position, and the division was created really as recommended by the AHRP panel. And so we're really working to increase affordable housing and preservation throughout the county. That's really what my position is designed to do, as well as the community awareness and legislative priorities. So this is what those recommendations were. Here is a little bit more about the goals. We've had that current half penny for affordable housing development and preservation. You've probably heard that based on the economy, the board was unable to provide the additional penny last year in the 2021 budget. However, we have had for the fiscal year 2022 budget, the board authorized the half penny plus the equivalent of a second half penny for the next 2 years for affordable housing, which we are very, very excited about. We have a NOFA coming out for funding, hopefully the beginning of July. And we are looking forward to lots of preservation and new construction in the upcoming years. And we're also looking at really creative ways to use our resources, use our land, and partner with both typical partners as well as unusual partners to make preservation and new construction happen. So another thing that came out of all of this is really the Preservation Task Force. So you may have heard about this. This was a whirlwind task force that started end of last year, so October 2020 through February 2021. We had an incredible panel of industry professionals who worked on this Preservation Task Force. We presented the recommendations to the Board of Supervisors at the April 6th Housing Committee meeting, and the tremendous work by the task force was recognized by the Board of Supervisors, which gave it its full support and adopted the task force's recommendations. Subsequent to that presentation, the board adopted the recommendations as well as authorized the Manufactured Housing Task Force, which is currently staff are working on getting that Manufactured Housing Task Force underway. And staff are also working on the comprehensive plan amendment that the board authorized as recommended by the Preservation Task Force. So those initiatives are both in process at this point. The Preservation Task Force created two definitions, so market affordable and committed affordable. My apologies, I tossed those around a little bit earlier in this presentation. Market affordable is housing that is typically considered affordable to households earning 60% of AMI and below, and just happens to be affordable at that level with no restrictions on the property. So there's no government restriction, there's no reason that the rents are affordable other than that's just what is able to be charged on the market. Typically it's our older properties, often it's the garden style apartment communities. They may not be in the best of condition and they just happen to be market affordable rents. And they're a very important source of market affordable rents throughout the community. Committed affordable properties are those that are also typically 60% AMI and below, and they are restricted by a deed restriction or a zoning requirement, and they are required to be committed at whatever specific affordability level. We also have some inclusionary zoning programs in the county. So we have the ADU and WDU program, affordable dwelling units and workforce dwelling unit programs, which you may have heard of, and I'll speak to them in a few minutes. Those have some higher affordability levels as well. The Preservation Task Force really fully embraced the One Fairfax policy and looked with an equity lens at how they approach the preservation conversation from that angle. Preservation, also just a few more things about the Preservation Task Force, looked at the notion of preserving buildings, both the physical structure of buildings as well as preserving the use of units. So we created definitions for what's called physical preservation. Sometimes it's appropriate to retain a physical structure, and sometimes it makes more sense to knock down a building and create new and have a redevelopment of an entire site or a variety of different types of combinations. And so there's a definition for use preservation, because if we have, for example, 100 units that are affordable at 60% AMI, we'd want to preserve the use of those 160% AMI units. And it becomes important to preserve that use, not necessarily that building at that point. And so the task force created definitions for things like that. So to give you a little highlight of what we have going on, we have a very robust pipeline that we are actively working towards exceeding that 5,015-year goal. Currently, we have 7 communities in pre-design or design phases all throughout the county. 2 of them are preservation, 5 are new construction. A couple of senior properties to highlight. You may have heard of several of these. We have one university with 120 senior units as part of that development. Oakwood with 150 senior units. Autumn Willow, again, 150 senior units. Little River Glen is 60 units. And then there's a Little River Glen renovation with 120 units. Under construction currently, we have 5 communities that either recently completed or are currently under construction. 2 of those preservation, 3 of them are new. New Lake Ann House is a senior community in Reston that you may have heard of. That's what we call preservation by replacement. An existing building with 240 units in it was demolished and a brand new building built on site. So that's the use preservation definition that I mentioned that the task force created. We preserve that use in a brand new building. And so that is an example of that. To switch gears a little bit, we have the comprehensive plan, which you may have heard of. This is a very important tool that is one of the ways that it enables us to develop affordable housing in the county. It's a statutory mandate that's required by the Code of Virginia that helps shape the development in the county, just in general. This is a very big plan that's housed in the Department of Planning and Development. The very first comprehensive plan was adopted in the 1950s, and the plan contains recommendations, but it's not a law. The plan must show the locality's long-range recommendations for general development, and it's implemented via the zoning ordinance along with other tools. So our comp plan includes land use and transportation maps, the policy plan, that's countywide policy, as well as area plans. We also within it have what's called the housing element of the comprehensive plan. And this is what defines the countywide housing availability, affordability, the critical housing issues, and housing goals and objectives. We recently updated this along with the WDU. We did I'll tell you about it in a minute, a little out of order, the WDU comprehensive plan amendment. And so we updated all sections to this except for sections related to preservation, since we knew the preservation task force was in process and they would want to update that as part of the comprehensive plan update for the preservation task force. But all of the goals and objectives have otherwise been recently updated. And so on this screen, you can just see the objectives as they are today in the recently adopted housing element. So to switch gears again, the Affordable and Workforce Dwelling Unit programs, these are part of our inclusionary zoning programs. And this is one of the ways that we get affordable housing, and it's done as part of our market rate development. So these are programs that actually are within my division, but it's a really interesting, unique program that we partner with the Department of Planning and Development because they are inclusionary zoning that happens as part of the zoning process. So we, on behalf of the FCRHA, are responsible for the administration of these programs. They have both a rental and a for sale component and are subject to certain restrictions during the affordability period, which these affordability periods range from 30 to 50 years. They're slightly different between the 2 different programs. The Board of Supervisors adopted the mandatory ADU program as part of the 1990s as part of the Fairfax County zoning ordinance. And the ADU program is applicable to wood frame and multifamily construction in 4 stories or less. So the ADU rental program serves households that earn up to 50 and 70% of the AMI. The ADU for sale program serves households earning up to 70% of the AMI. The board adopted the WDU Administrative Policy Guidelines, the countywide policy program, in 2007, and then it's Tyson's WDU Administrative Policy Guidelines in 2010. The WDU program is applicable for our mid-rise and high-rise construction, and it's a proffer-based incentive system. So it's voluntary, and in exchange for creating WDUs, developers can get additional density, which means they can build more units overall. So developers choose to do this, they can benefit, and then we can benefit from having units in a market affordable building that, I'm sorry, market rate building that has affordable units then. So typically we would have somewhere between 12 to 20% of a market rate building that would end up with affordable units through the WDU program. So we recently changed the slide. We recently just adopted new changes. This shows on the left what the policy had been, and on the right it shows what it changed to. We discovered that the units, they had originally gone up to 100 and 120% AMI. And we realized that those units were actually at or above market rate. So it really wasn't providing much of a benefit. And so we lowered the AMI for the WDU affordable units to 80% and below. And we reduced the overall number of units required as part of proffering into that program. So it overall gives better benefit to everybody for being part of that program. Okay, so I know I've thrown a lot of information at you very quickly. I tried not to talk too fast. So I really am so excited to have a conversation with you all. I understand that you've recommitted your commitment to affordable housing and strategies for aging in place for the upcoming Shape the Future policy, and I'm so excited to hear that. I would love to hear what you all are thinking. I would love to learn more from all of you. I have some questions that I've posed on the screen, and I'm happy to talk about how we can best partner together, and I'd love to answer any questions that you all have or have a discussion. So Mike, it looks like you have a question.
Yes, I do.
And let me
Mike?
pull up
Okay.
this.
I can't see everybody at once, so I don't know. There,
So
now I know whose hand is up. All right,
can I
yes.
get my turn? Okay. Yeah, well, thanks for that presentation. So one simple question. Do you have links to all the various reports and plans that you talked about in there in the presentation? That's a simple question.
Yes.
You can email it to us later or whatever. The more significant question is something that I've become aware of because of what's been happening in my neighborhood. So when you talk about affordable for older adults, maybe this is out of your bailiwick because it's a big issue. Many of these older adults are not buying a new home that needs to be affordable. They're living in their existing home that they've lived in for decades. Typically, it's a smaller home in a good location. And builders are taking advantage of that to basically tear down those homes and build, what we satirically call McMansions. So what does that do? If the older adult needs to find another place to live, where are they living? Are they moving out of the area? Are they trying to get into one of your multi-unit facilities? But of course, that reduces the supply of, I like the term used, affordable at all price points. So those homes that were once affordable to some price points, younger families, are now not affordable. Is that something your office is looking into? Because I've talked to the land use people, I've talked to the zoning people. Tomorrow I'm talking to my supervisor, and it sounds like the county is big on helping developers, but is very limited in what they can do to help these older homeowners or any homeowner and the community nearby. Your presentation had a lot of good words about preserving community. I'm trying to see, is this one of the things that you're looking into?
So let me just make sure I'm hearing your question.
What's the question, right?
Yeah, let me.
Are you looking into the loss of affordability of older homes with older adults who are aging in place that is torn down to build a multi-million-dollar home that takes away the supply of affordable homes?
Okay.
So that's what I thought you were asking. It's funny that you asked the question now. I raised just that very point last week, actually, with some colleagues. I don't know that anybody is actively looking into that, and I'm not sure what we can do. I raised it in the context of, do we know, because this is happening in all of our neighboring jurisdictions too.
Right.
Arlington in particular is seeing that so much, and I questioned what are the other local jurisdictions doing to try and prevent it. I know Arlington has their missing middle study that they're doing, and I think that that is looking at some of that. But I agree with you. That's a big issue and concern, and I don't know how we can incentivize, because there's incentive for developers to purchase those older homes and build the larger homes, and so we would need to see what kind of incentives are available.
So rehabbing is a lot less expensive and less of an environmental impact on our landfill, on storm runoff, on materials, energy. So rehabbing and preserving the community is one approach. And you can check Montgomery County. I have a whole list of resources that it includes a study Montgomery County did some years ago on tear downs. I'll be happy to send you one of the links that I found that is a compendium of everything on that topic.
Yeah, please do. If you have any resources, this is perfect timing, because I just last week was really starting to want to look into this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The owners of those older homes have the right to sell their homes and make as much money as they can off of them. So that's not something the state is going to interfere with. So
the county has zoning regulations that talk about setbacks, height.
I don't want to have an argument between.
Yeah,
us
I'm telling
and
you, that's the issue. Yeah, it's the private rights versus community rights.
Right, and
our tax dollars.
State land rights, really go with the ownership of the property. There's not a whole lot, as Judith, has mentioned, that we can't control. Developers are going to do what they want to do. We have, there's a moment at which they have to be.
So you can, okay, this is a big discussion. There is a lot you can do. Let me say that, and I'll send you some information on it.
We're having a discussion, so I want to know if anybody else would like to chime in here. Raise your hand, anybody want to ask questions? Kathy Cole.
Well, I want to ask a question, but I also want to follow up with Mike. Mike, it'd be interesting for the rest of us too, to know what some of those possible limits or considerations that the county could make. I mean, don't just send them to Judith. I'd like to see them too.
Okay, no problem.
Then I have a question for Judith. One is just, I'm just curious, what does a half penny, I don't mean individually, what does it equal? But in total, what approximately does a half penny equal? And then I have one more question. Do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm pretty sure it's 13 million. Let me just double check that so I don't tell you wrong.
That's okay. I was just curious.
I think it's 13 million.
All right. My other question is, how do you determine where the location of these housing? You showed a chart of the housing that was under construction or ready to go and whatever. Other than Little River Glen, which is in sort of Annandale, what determines where these are located? And is there anything happening in the older sections of Fairfax that would allow people maybe an affordable choice if they did sell their home or move out to stay in the community that they have lived in for 150 years?
Right.
Those are great questions and huge questions. So the half penny, I just shot a message to a colleague, so let me see if I can confirm that so I tell you accurately. I'm sorry for not knowing that offhand. As far as what determines where they are located, I will tell you we are leaving no stone unturned as far as finding vacant land that is available. We are looking at, as we were directed by the board, we're looking at all of the vacant owned county owned land to see what's available in terms of what's buildable. Not all vacant land is buildable. There's stormwater issues, floodplains, all kinds of things like that. And so some of it is based on what is available. Some of it is what's available on the market that we can find. So as far as new construction, as far as what is available that we can preserve, that is because we have a no net loss of from a preservation standpoint. If an opportunity to purchase a market affordable unit comes available, so a lot of what we do is offer a subordinate loan. So like a second loan they'll have a first mortgage and then an additional mortgage to help fill a gap for our usually nonprofit and sometimes for-profit partners. They might find a community. A recent example is AHC found 2 communities in Route 1 that were market affordable, that were being sold on the market, and they had a substantial portion of the units were market affordable, and AHC recently bought them. They're called Landings Fort Belvoir and Landings Mount Vernon, and they just bought them, and they were able to get a loan from us for one of them, and then some money from Virginia Housing through their Amazon Impact Reach money, and preserve those units. And so preservation, it's what becomes available on the market. And so we work to help preserve what's available. As far as some of the older sections of Fairfax, I'm not sure that I know in particular what's happening right now, but we are trying to find opportunities everywhere. The answer is basically the same for what determines where they're located. Really, it's based on what we can find that's available. Actively looking in every place.
What about commercial space that's empty?
We are also looking at commercial space opportunities.
One of the draws to something like Goodwin House and Bailey's Crossroads, not only is it a beautiful building, and I realize that we're not talking about Goodwin House, but it is located right near a shopping area that has a lot of things that would be agreeable.
Right.
So we have commercial space that is going empty. Is there any attempt to purchase or rehab that for housing?
Yes, we are absolutely looking into commercial space as well. We're as much as possible, we are looking in every potential opportunity.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll stop.
We had in the 50+ community action plan that was passed in 2014, the Commission on Aging was involved in helping to put that together and also oversight and reporting on it. Neighborhood-based in transit, particularly in transit areas where people can get to shopping, where they can, catch a bus, was definitely a priority. And then the other thing about the housing for older adults is accessibility. So is this appropriate housing for people to live in safely? Does it have no step entries? Does it have, or elevators? And, can people age successfully there? That's the other half of trying to keep people in their existing homes, which many people want to do, the ones who aren't trying to cash out. And a whole aging in place program is something we'd like to see happen as we develop the next plan, whether it's working with community partners like Rebuilding Together or finding, there are nonprofit developers. The Lewinsville, for instance, really that project was overseen by a nonprofit. And that's a way to keep the costs down and build, I think they built over 80 affordable units that opened at the Falstead in McLean there not long ago. So we're looking at, we know that we've added the accessory living units that people can build within their existing homes, either to house an older person or to live in it themselves and rent out the rest of the house. So that's an option. But the location of these places and the land for them, the county has land, right, that it owns, that it can use. I'm just looking at all the questions. So Kathy asked the question I had about conversion of existing structures like, old shopping centers or hotels, location of senior housing near shopping and transportation. And you gave us some examples of what the Preservation Task Force is doing. does the county ever buy out owners of multifamily unit properties and take them over?
So it's a good question. The county can buy properties directly, and we have. It happens more often than not. I think we are more likely to lend money to a partner who will buy something, but we have purchased properties directly.
Okay.
So we
Anyone
do
else
both
want to
ways.
jump in here? Joe?
And just to circle back to the question about the half penny, my colleague said he thinks that it's slightly less than 12 million. In fiscal year 21, we had 12 million for the housing blueprint RFP. And for fiscal year 22, we think it's about 23.5 million for the one penny. So it was a little, I rounded up.
Good. Joe, you have a question for her?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Judith.
Hello.
I'm Joe Hasty. I'm the joining the meeting as the Providence representative from my home in Clearwater, Florida. I listened to you, Mike, and I hear the frustration in your question. It's something that the Commission on Aging has discussed and talked about ever since I've been on the commission, which is a long time. The ability to create or mandate affordable housing in the development process is something that's just, it just becomes extremely frustrating to even talk about, because it's primarily in the purview of the Planning Commission to put those kinds of mandates in and to provide the kind of laws or anything that we can actually mandate legally to get it to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near future. I'm curious, like Kathy, to be able to see what ideas and thoughts you have on the process to be able to make that happen. But it's a long-standing problem that we've talked about a long time. When you have a big new development coming up, how can we insist that a certain percentage of that development will be affordable housing, and not just for seniors, but for everyone in the county? That's just a comment. It's just letting you know that the frustration, I feel it also, and it's been there for a long time in the Commission on Aging.
Well, if they're subject to the ADU program, it's required, and they can choose to opt into the WDU program if they meet the requirements of the WDU program. So in those cases, for the multifamily communities, that gives us the opportunity to get a certain percentage of those communities as affordable. And those programs are very successful. We have, through the ADU program, we've had a total of 2,903 units produced, about half of those rental and half of those for sale. And of the WDU program, we've had about 1,700 of those produced and almost entirely rental units. So that's a pretty successful program, I would say. For the WDU program, we have almost 8,000 more units that have gone through the zoning process and are fully entitled, and it's just a matter of when those communities get built. So those are working pretty well as a way for the market to develop affordable housing through those programs. I mean, I will tell you, we feel it on my staff. I have a very small staff, and we need to grow because we have had so many more ADU and WDUs develop over the years, and it's pulling my staff. I've tried to keep up with all of the units that are coming online, either that are being sold or are coming into the rental program that we oversee. So they're working really well from that perspective.
Well, Judith, what you're doing today, presenting to the COA, is very important. And I personally would like to encourage you to come back to us at any time that you would like to support, as far as any program that you have which would increase the amount of affordable housing, especially when it comes to seniors. And I'm sure the rest of my colleagues would agree that we were ready to support any effort that you and your organization will have in order to facilitate that. So, you know, I kind of read into one of your questions. You were saying, what are our ideas? What would we like to have done? And one of the things is to listen to presentations like yours, and to have to have a request come to us at any time you need support for increasing the availability of housing, especially for seniors.
Right. We have to let Judith go. She has another obligation at 2 o'clock. So we will continue this conversation. We'd like to have this be an open channel. You know, obviously we have more to say, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for coming today, Judith. We'll digest what we've learned so far and be ready to talk to you again.
Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Judith.
All right, bye-bye.
Whew. That is one hot topic. You know, it's been just frustrating all along to be involved in supporting the housing and not seeing it happen. And we were struck a blow some years back when the state changed the rules about proffers and what could be asked of developers. I seem to recall that Chairman McKay at that time was one of the people who was trying to get that legislation redone or overturned. And I don't know where it stands now, but there's certainly more to be done on that as we move into the shape the future. And we've got some time on it because we're going to go back and do a new survey there. So we'll get to that. In fact, we're just going to go right into old business at this point. I will say something quickly about that. Yesterday, 6 of us were in attendance in person, seated in the front row, moved down into the chairs that have microphones, and invited to speak at the Older Adults Committee meeting at the Government Center. And all of the members of the Board of Supervisors were there. Not everybody was there at the beginning, but I think they were all there. I think Mr. Alcorn came in towards the end. So there was definitely strong interest, a lot of questions and comments, particularly by some of the new members of the Board of Supervisors who are kind of getting up to speed on what's been happening with this committee and what's going on with the next plan. But it was generally agreed and approved officially by the board that there would be another community survey conducted post-pandemic now to see how things have changed. There's a possibility of maybe adding some questions or shaping that survey a little bit more to what we see as our needs in some areas that were not covered in the previous community survey. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about that. They just approved the timeline that begins with that survey, which will happen before the end of this year. And then the ultimate, where did I put it? The ultimate sign off. So through July through December, pre-survey planning, January through May, the administration of a survey and collect data and analyze that data. The final approval of the SHAPE plan is now scheduled for May 2023. So this is a 2-year project, not what we were hoping for, but it seems to be what the combined county staff and the supervisors think it will be appropriate. So I'm not really going to take any questions on that. Let's just give a quick report on it. So we're under old business. This is the time for Commissioner. I'm sorry, Kay, do you have a question?
I'll just make one comment because I think it's important. What they also did say, and Supervisor Harity supported, is that we can continue to work on some of the initiatives that we feel that are strongly important, such as the handicap parking issue. And I really think that I gave us a little bit of direction that because it's going to be delayed, it does not mean that we can't continue to focus on some of the major initiatives we think are important.
Right. Absolutely true. So that things we'd already envisioned doing, we can go ahead and see if we can make this happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn.
Tom, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'll make a brief comment. I am very disappointed by this decision to delay the SHAPE plan by 2 years. I don't understand why we're kicking the can down the road. I'm going to read you briefly, not take too much time, but this comes from the 2010 census, 2010. 30.5% of those aged 75 plus live alone in Fairfax County. 76.8 live in single family housing and they're age 80 or older. 47.5% of the county people here 80 years or older have one or more of the following conditions: serious difficulty walking, climbing stairs, and independent living, disability, difficulty dressing or bathing, cognitive disability. And there is a net in-migration of people 85 years or older into Fairfax County.
Really?
And so we're going to kick this down the road. 22% of the people of this community responded to your survey, which is very, very high. And I would say one of the reasons possibly that might be the case is that they're very concerned about the future here. And I'm very disappointed. I just want to make that on the record. If I dissent, I'm the only one thinking this way, so be it. But it's really, really a shame. We should get started working on this thing. Thank you.
Oh, Tom, it's very understandable. I think we all are disappointed to see such an extended timeline. Kathy?
I was just going to say, yes, I think we are all disappointed that it's going to take so much longer, but there are all things that we are working on that we could continue to work on. We could take some of the initiatives that were not even half finished from the previous action plan. There's nothing to preclude us from doing those or anything other that we decide is in our purview. So, I realize that doesn't necessarily translate into a program, but it's,
I agree with you, Kathy, but a community doesn't have a 5-year plan, tends to drift and ends up in a place it doesn't want to be. And I've worked with other communities. I've been doing this all my life, and you got to have a game plan. You got to have a set of goals and something to work for. And I'm sorry, I'm very disappointed with this. I'm sorry you're willing to wait 2 years, but we have housing problems. We just heard this, but there's no plan to solve it. How are we going to do this? Sure, we worked on these issues before, but this just to have another survey,
Tom, I don't think we have any choice on this, frankly.
Well,
the Board of Supervisors voted on it. The Chairman McKay definitely wants to move on this. He wants to have a countywide plan. He wants it integrated with the strategic plan. He called on Mr. Hill yesterday to talk about that. And we had already been aligning everything we were suggesting with the new priorities of the strategic plan. So there's a bureaucratic thing going on here that the commission jumping up and down and screaming isn't going to make any difference. So we should focus on what we can do. As somebody
Carol,
else want to jump in?
Carol, just one other thing. These people represent us. We don't work for them. It's the other way around. And I'm going to write another letter to them. It's not going to be heated, I'm sure, but this community needs to move forward and plan for the future. That's all I'll say. Now I'll let it go.
I can't imagine that anyone else disagree. Kay?
Maybe we can have a compromise, because I think we're all very disappointed, Tom. But, as Kathy mentioned, we have a lot of initiatives that we can go back and take a look at and make an action plan. Nothing can prevent that. And let's take a look at what we think we can accomplish until this plan gets started again. So I think we have to, I think Carolyn's right. I mean, we really will need the support of the county to go forward with the plan. But in the meantime, I don't think we should just sit and do nothing. I think maybe if we come back to our next meeting with the specific initiatives we all would like to work on and develop an action plan as an interim step until we can go forward with shape.
Mhm. Well, we have, under each of the 5 categories, we have a list of possible subheadings, things we know we're already doing, like dementia friendly. We can put more energy and time into that. Caregiver support is really well supported within the AAA. Transportation, we're still waiting for the famous, swipe card that's going to get people into all different kinds of transportation. So we could push a little harder on that to make that more accessible for people. So I think we can pull out some of the pieces of this and simply forge ahead with them. So we can decide among what it is or who our partners are going to be on that. I felt that the home modifications and the home maintenance was a very important part of the housing because people do want to try to stay in their existing homes. That may be an unrealistic expectation, but the original survey said as long as possible. So we need the kind of housing that Judith is telling us about, that's age appropriate and accessible, and with a more multi-unit situation where other people are taking care of maintenance when people, or we need the assisted living facilities, and those are coming in. We're getting more requests since the zoning was changed to allow the continuing care places. There are more rentals which are affordable in that category rather than the big upfront investment that you have to make in places like Green Spring. So, we can focus on certain specific things in the area of housing without having to wait for a new plan. What else do you all want to see us do? See Kathy Muha, your hand is up. Unmute yourself.
One of the things that I've thought about over the years on the commission is that we could all take a moment and look back to our own districts and see if we can get a handle on some of the needs, talk with some of the citizens in our specific areas, find out what their desires are, what their complaints are, and perhaps we can bring those to the meetings as well and find out in a very personal way in our own location some of the things that are bothering our specific district citizens. Might just be a good start.
That's a good point. We were supposed to be the connection. It's been hard for us during the pandemic to keep that up, but now maybe we can be more connected. Kay Larmer, I saw your hand.
I agree with you, Kathy, and I think this is a time for us to even become more active with our villages. If you have a village in your community, to see they have really kept a pulse. They've been taking the pulse of the community throughout this whole pandemic, at least in McLean and in Great Falls. So I think it's really helpful for us to spend more energy locally, and that includes, going back and talking to our supervisors individually. Because I just recently heard of a housing development going up in McLean that has nothing that's affordable. So, I don't know how that has happened, and I should probably take the leap and go to John Faust and ask him, what's going on? Why isn't affordable considered? Why isn't the workforce considered? I did complete the survey, but that's as far as I went.
Okay.
When they sent it to me asking what I thought about it. It's going to be very close to my house.
Okay. Kathy.
And while we're doing that, I agree with both of you, Kay and Kathy, but while we're doing that, we were all liaisons or advocates for certain initiatives in the previous plan. And we've kind of let that all go. We did the final report, but the report showed that some weren't finished. And let's go back and look at our own interest areas on that plan, or our own interest areas, period, and come up with a short list of things that we should either continue or start just from our own experience with that action plan.
Mhm.
for the next meeting. I'm putting a deadline on it for the next meeting.
Jackie Woodruff, did I see your hand up at one point?
You did, and I was just going to tell you all that already scheduled for your July meeting is a leader from Dementia Friendly Fairfax, which is one of the initiatives, of course, that was included on the Shape the Future of Aging list of categories, and that a few of you are already active in assisting with. Just to let you know that you're thinking well, as usual.
Yes, Diane.
In terms of talking to our residents in our particular areas, while many people voice that they're pleased about the services once they know what's available and everything, but one of the frustrating things that I'm hearing and seeing is people moving out of the county because of the taxes. You know, they agree that it's a really good county to live in, but you get to a point where you can't sustain it, and they, can't go into any facilities or anything like this. And the recourse that they have is to move out of the county. And we know that the older population, they have a great wealth of knowledge and all sorts of positive things. And it's a shame to lose them because of the taxes.
Shut off. There's a lawnmower going in my next door neighbor's yard. Yeah, it is frustrating. We could pick some things. I mean, one of the things I was hoping to work on was the end of life planning aspect in the economic stability and planning. Kathy Muha knows the two of us have been interested in that for a long time. And certainly the pandemic showed how important it was for families to have decisions in place, to have discussions well before you need them, so that if someone is taken ill or God forbid dies suddenly, you know what needs to happen next, and that things have been put in order ahead of time, and that you have access to records that you need, and you know what kind of interventions your mom or dad would want or not want at the end of life. So, that's something I don't want to wait 2 years to work on. So I'll try to figure out some other way to get connected with that. So I think we're going to have to move on here pretty soon. Tom, you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, it's very brief. Ann Cahill is our county demographer, right? She prepared about, sorry, you can't see this, but this was a little sheet she prepared based on the 2010 census. Now we have the 2020 census. American Community Survey breaks this out, the data. So it'd be interesting to see if the figures I have quoted from 10 years ago have changed. And maybe we can at least do that. I'm satisfied with that. If we could get an update on how many people are living alone, disabilities, who has disabilities, that sort of thing. Just a couple of point sets to see if we're actually getting better or worse in 10 years. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. I think Miss Cahill retired, right, Jackie? But
it may be. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll let that go for there. We have some other old business to take care of. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Virginia Governor's Conference that 4 of us attended. Well, more than 4 of us, because Jackie was there too, and some other people from the Area Agency on Aging. It was a loaded schedule. As you saw, you all got a copy of the advance schedule and the list of topics. And I'm pleased that we were able to cover sessions that were other commissioners were interested in. They've posted the recordings online now through the conference portal, and those of us who were there have access to that. And if you pull up those recordings, you can just copy the URL and send it to somebody. So I've done that in a couple of cases here so that you can actually watch the entire presentation and see the slides that were given. And that's a better way to talk about something. But I just wanted to mention quickly some takeaways I had. There was a lot of focus there about lessons learned from the pandemic. The opening session was a panel discussion with top executives from groups like the Elder Justice Coalition and the N4A, the Area Agencies National Group, the National Caucus and Center on Black Aging, and the National Hispanic Council on Aging. So there was a lot of talk about access to healthcare and transportation and the digital divide, scams related to vaccination, and the whole question of hesitancy and disinformation about the vaccines and the vaccine process. Resets they were looking for is, finding new ways to address cognitive decline associated with the social isolation in the last year and a half, that getting vaccinated doesn't fix that aspect of it. More healthcare services, community-based nutrition and mental health services have to be available in all communities. We need to empower families in underserved communities. 80% of the AAAs nationwide are in rural areas, providing rural outreach, so the urban solutions don't necessarily work for them. And I actually will mention several groups that that did presentations here that focused on what they would be able to do. And it was very heartening actually to see. And this theme of equity. And one thing they said was we should be paying attention to helping younger people age successfully. And that actually came up again in one of the sessions, the Disrupt Ageism session, where they said, we're all aging from the day we're born. That aging is not something that suddenly starts happening to you when you reach 60 or 70, so preparing in your 30s and 40s, your most active years, for what's going to be your situation at the end of life is something to think about. And the whole equity theme really then carried through the conference and was reinforced at the end with the final plenary session presentation by Dr. Janice Underwood, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So besides those lessons learned, there was talk about empowering older individuals to take a more active role in their own health. That one there was the program Virginia VAAA Cares, or I don't know how we say it actually, VAAA Cares, has had social workers acting as care transition intervention coaches. So they work with people coming out of the hospital, particularly people who've had multiple readmissions to the hospital and chronic health problems, work with them to prepare them, to follow through with them, to visit the home and assess what the home is like, to check in with them on medication management and follow-up appointments, and give them a journal where they can be writing questions for their provider. And in a 4-year study under this transition programs, the rate of readmission to hospitals dropped from an expected 25% to 13.2%. And that could increase even better. So, but one of the most encouraging things there was that the patients were asked to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 their confidence in being able to manage and control their own health problems. And they started at a level of 5.02, and by the end of this experience, it went up to 7.88. They felt this working with the coaches and the transition teams really did give them a handle on what they needed to do personally. There were, as I mentioned, there were several sessions. There was one about the health wagon in Southwestern Virginia. There was one by the Jefferson Area Board for Aging, which is the counties surrounding Charlottesville. There was one from the Appalachian Agency for Senior Citizens that serves Buchanan, Dickinson, Russell, and Tazewell counties. I learned a lot about the geography of Virginia just from looking these up. And then a team that's a little closer to us from Fauquier, Culpeper, Madison, Orange, and Rappahannock called Aging Together, which is a collaboration where those groups work together and have a board of directors and a paid staff. So they're, locally people have really responded during the pandemic, have found ways to reach out to their members by phone, if not by, internet connection. they've, sent volunteers out to build, one group build remarkable ramps and front porches for mobile homes so that people who were stuck, people who use wheelchairs and were stuck inside their mobile home can now get out and around. And these were in fairly remote areas. And the last one I want to mention is my favorite session, which was done by the Virginia Commonwealth University's Department of Gerontology, called Let's Disrupt Ageism and Develop Elderhood. The Jen Pryor, who's the director of the Department of Gerontology there, showed us how ageism, stereotypes and discrimination against people on the basis of their chronological age pervades our culture and constitutes a socially acceptable form of prejudice. It's not just, they interviewed, they have 3 films, they're on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and search Disrupt Ageism with an E in the middle, you'll find those 3 VCU films, and they interviewed people on the street and asked them, what do you think about older adults and aging? And you got responses like decline, dementia, disability, crankiness, or if you think about your own response, if you run into an old friend you haven't seen in a long time and you say, you look great, you haven't aged a bit. Or if you see an older couple walking in the park holding hands, you say, oh, isn't that cute? Or if you read the ads in the magazines and you have products that fight 7 signs of aging, or this is the anti-aging breakthrough you've been waiting for, just shows how pervasive it is in our culture. So that was something new for me to think about. Something that occurred to me later was, if you go shopping for a birthday card for an older friend, if you read what they put on as the messages on cards for older adults, it's actually pretty startling. So disrupting aging, they talked about raising awareness of inequity and discrimination, recognizing and understanding how the language we use and the way we act impacts the larger cultural narrative about older people. Look at the advertising for age segregated communities, the lively people at 55 plus, the folks being waited on by aides in in assisted living, and then nursing homes, people in wheelchairs all bent over and nurses everywhere. So what are the messages we're conveying? So I recommend that you look at those VCU films and think about this new area of prejudice and discrimination that goes along with getting older in this country. So those are my comments about the conference, and I want to invite Diane or Kathy Muha, who are both also attending there, to share some of the thoughts they may have had about it. Either one of you ladies. Martha Cooper's not able to be with us today, so she'll talk about it later. Diane, do you want to say anything further?
Other than it was an awful lot of information packed in 4 days. I didn't know the mind could take such a amount of information at one time. And the ageism conference is the one that hit me as well. But aside from that one, there was a program, Brain Health Disparity. Dr. Paul Aravich, Aravich. Apparently he's a speaker that is on TED Talks, and apparently he goes all over the place speaking about the last frontier. And it's not space. What he says, it's the space between the ears, investigating what's going on in the brain. And what was interesting about that is he had some actual brains there, and he was pointing out different surfaces on how the COVID could be coming in. But the other thing that he brought out a couple of times was the dementia and the impact of dementia on the quality of living, how it affects overall health, and relation to like substance abuse and things like this. And in relation to what Tom was talking about with people living alone versus so many years ago, that's one of the things that they're talking about more and more. So many people are going to be aging into the 65 plus, and out of that, a certain percentage might be getting diagnosis of dementia. and how many of them are going to have the ability to live in facilities. So they're going to be in communities. So making sure that the health and wellness of everybody, and especially those with certain diagnoses, is taken care of. You know, it was a virtual event, but they had a setup with the vendors where you got a bingo card and you went to visit all the vendors. And when you went to each of the vendor, you got a little mini synopsis of what it was that they did. And you got a special word and you put it down and you were up for a prize about that. So there was a bit of networking going on with the vendors, but also the other people that happened to be visiting at any given time. So, you know, while it was Zoom and people were saying it wasn't in person, there still was an awful lot to learn about others as well.
Thank you, Diane. Kathy Muha, do you want to add anything?
For me, I attended both the bullying in the elderly, which we all saw that, you know, had the benefit of hearing Karen speak to us personally. And then I attended the financial exploitation session, and I was disappointed that there wasn't more information, but very happy that they were looking into recruiting and talking with people so that we can glean some idea of how many people are actually subjected to financial exploitation. There's a number that they weren't very confident about, but said that it's around 40% of all exploitation occurs with caregivers in the home. It gave you a few new ideas about how you can prevent some of the financial exploitation, which were perhaps mechanisms that we hadn't heard about before. They talked about the different types of, you know, power of attorney, conservator that you can have, and then ways in which you can try to intercept or avoid the issues from happening, which is what we always talk about. Pick wisely. Who is your surrogate? Leave your wishes well known before you need them to be executed for you. But it was interesting because they talked about, and something that people do because of the clients that I work with, joint accounts. Unless you are very confident in the person that has their name on your bank account, that can lead to issues with your cash assets. Make sure that you do direct deposits and make no checks directly to cash. There's also Virginia statute that can that will protect you in requesting a list of expenditures paid by the power of attorney, so that you do have a way of reviewing those expenditures that have been made and then determining whether or not you have a legal case. So as far as brand new information, as far as what types of surrogates and how to go about those things, it's all information we've seen before. But some of the ways to prevent exploitation. Another one was to delete the gifting authority whatsoever from the power of attorney, so that someone cannot in any way control how much money would be given from your account. So it wasn't a lot of new information, but I thought it was very well done. The presentations were clear. I wish I would have had more time to attend some of the other ones, but it was very well done. And if anyone's interested, I can send the URL to you. What was interesting was the woman was the director of gerontology at the Virginia Tech Center for Gerontology, and there was an attorney from the Blacksburg area that was speaking, and he said he's available to answer questions. So it was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people, if you're interested in the session, and you'll find on the slides at the end, they always put their contact information, and you know, we're very good about offering to help out. So I think that's all the time we have for the the Governor's Conference. But as I say, go back and look at the list of sessions. And if you're interested, let me know. I can put you in touch with any you want to hear about. And we have a couple minutes here. We're running a little late, but Mike has got an update for us, I think, about the film club idea. Phyllis couldn't be with us today.
Okay. Yeah, so let's see. Briefly, Phyllis and I have been brainstorming about the issue, and a couple of days ago, we had a Zoom meeting along with Jackie and Evan Braff of NCS to kind of bat around some ideas on the approach to this, which I've come up with a kind of a name for what this could be, the Connected Community Contemporary Cinema Club for Senior Citizens. And it's kind of a basic model is like a film club, where you assign a movie, people watch it on their own time, and then reconvene to discuss it, led by a facilitator. Phyllis is, to start off with, Phyllis and I, and Jerry Titian, a friend of hers, can do that. Kind of the alternate model that we talked about is where you actually have a showing of the movie of interest at a movie theater, and then after the movie, again, once we can meet in person safely, you'd have a facilitated discussion. And then kind of a non-book club model, maybe it's not our first choice at all, but to have an actual film festival where you show a number of films related to aging. And so I think there were, in this discussion with Evan, there kind of, nothing's ever as simple as it should be, is, the way I characterize kind of how we thought about the constraints here. So concern about, is this going to be affordable for people to rent or stream movies, or to go to a movie? Is there a limit on the number of participants and how to control that if you want to at all? Is it something the county maybe couldn't or shouldn't do? And so look at some of the nonprofits like AARP, Shepherd Center, the JCC, and maybe start somewhere with a pilot study with a smaller group to see how it works, and how to advertise through like the Golden Gazette or the 50+ list. So next week, we're going to reconvene and keep talking about this, because Evan said he was going to talk a little bit with the library as maybe a venue to allow easy access to some movies. We don't know, and even George Mason University. So he has some contacts there. I'm going to talk to contacts I have at one of the Shepherd Centers and the JCC. And although we didn't discuss what particular movies we might want to show that relate to the theme, points that you all just raised previously about topics fit very nicely with my initial list. So The Father is about dementia friendly. You're talking about end of life planning. There's a movie I haven't seen yet, but I put it on my list now, called Get Low, from 2009, a drama about a Tennessee hermit in the 1930s who throws his own funeral party while still alive. So that's one way to practice end of life planning. And then exploitation. There's a recent Netflix movie I thought was pretty interesting called I Care a Lot, about exploiting legal guardianship and exploitation. And then of course there's some others, The Farewell, that's also a fascinating movie about, I did see about dealing with death and dying, and some others. So send me your list, and once, if we can get this going, and send me your
Unless
ideas.
you want to make a, write up what you've just told us is what the options, and we can weigh in on that. And
Yeah, I wrote it down. I have a little note page I can send to you.
And we can all keep an eye out for films that we think would be appropriate, and figure out if they're available.
Right.
Mention
Yeah,
some
I've got
research.
something I can, after Phyllis looks at it.
Yeah. So when
makes-
we're ready for an action item, we'll
Yeah,
have something to go on. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Trina, you've been patiently waiting. I'm sorry we've run a little bit over, but I will invite you now to deliver the AAA report for us. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. Yesterday, Tara gave a great presentation at the Older Adults Committee meeting on the COVID-19 Older Adult Plan and the future of SHAPE. As you know, the board approved the timeline and will be following up with some of the items that they specifically addressed. We actually were doing some of the things. I probably should have spoke up at the board meeting, but I think it all worked out fine. And so we are also going to be following up with you all to see where and how we can start working together on some action items. Notably, though, Tara mentioned that COVID has really highlighted our Meals on Wheels program, and we've served more clients by way of the partnership and the vendor model that we've done. And we're planning to continue this delivery model as it models an effective and efficient government. And so she mentioned that yesterday, and I just wanted to make sure that you all really understood what that meant. What it means is that effective August 2nd, our vendor is going to officially continue delivering the meals for us. And in place of volunteers delivering meals, the vendor is going to deliver the meals, and we are going to be offering up other county opportunities for the Meals on Wheels volunteer, well, any volunteer, but specifically the Meals on Wheels volunteers, and introducing a new, what I believe they're calling a mealtime buddy program, where volunteers who we're delivering can spend more time with clients and share a meal or share a conversation, unlike what the current Meals on Wheels program was designed for, which was to just drop off meals. And so, you know, and keep going so that you can meet, so that we can meet the health department's guidance on the 2-hour window delivery timeframe. So now we're really trying to bring in the socialization piece and giving those volunteers that opportunity to really go in and sit with clients, share a meal, share a conversation, share a movie, what have you. So we're going to be moving towards that model. And there's other reasons too. We've addressed some food insecurities and some missed meals. The data showed us that we have missed consecutively since 2017. We've missed over 1,000 meals for clients. And in 2020, when COVID hit to now, we've missed 0 in the delivery model with the vendors and Fast Tran. So, you know, just making sure that clients are served. In addition to that, we've served more than 200 new clients since COVID. Prior to COVID, we had less clients. So as we increase and we're serving more meals, which obviously means more routes and less volunteers. We were, you know, volunteers, they're volunteers. They could either show up or not show up, which contributed to us missing, you know, over 1,000 meals for clients. And then another good piece about it is that the state actually has increased our funding for our nutrition program, which helps with, not helps, but it actually really helped build the model of having the vendor delivery model. And so the new funding, and this is in addition to the $2 million we received from the CARES Act. So this is ongoing funding received from the state just specifically for the nutrition program. So not only did we add the Saturday meal, but we're also adding this vendor model to ensure all clients and new clients get served. And then the other piece that the state, I wanted to bring to your attention, the state has updated our contract to say that nutrition services are considered essential services, which means it is required and mandated that we provide this. So this new model helps us to address us making sure clients are receiving meals. So obviously we didn't say all that at the board meeting yesterday, but I wanted to kind of bring those points to your attention because we are going to be letting volunteers know this at the end of the month. This will take place again in not till August, but we wanted to give them a heads up. We also wanted to give them the opportunity to start deciding if they're going to go ahead and work on or try to do new volunteer programs and really coordinate their schedules to kind of be a meal buddy with some of our clients who will want this. Keep in mind, it's been a year since volunteers have delivered Meals on Wheels. So we don't anticipate there'll be too much upset because they haven't done this task in over a year. However, officially, we are moving to the new model to meet the needs of more clients, and especially as we get new clients, and especially because we have the funding to do so. So again, it's that efficient, effective model for government. The other thing is Tara, and I know Carolyn presented at the Social Services Advisory Board, and that presentation apparently went really well. So thank you for that. Thank you, Carolyn, for presenting with Tara. And then the other really great news is that our Fairfax County's Caregiver Alert Notification Program won a 2021 Aging Innovation Award. So very exciting. And Juliana, who was just, I think she's almost serving as a supervisor kind of in that unit right now under Tara, but she will be at the N4A award ceremony in July virtually to accept that award. And during that time, they're going to actually decide, because they had several categories. And so we obviously are in the caregiver category, but they're going to be giving out, they're going to select the program to receive a monetary award. So we'll know in July if we were selected for that, but at least for now, we'll take the plaque that says it was an innovation award. And I really appreciate the advocacy and support from the Commission on Aging and just helping us get the word out to caregivers. And that program is just growing. I think last I knew there were over 700 folks receiving caregiver text alerts. So absolutely amazing for that program. So that's it.
That's great. Thank you, Trina. Yeah, I was really happy to hear the supervisors, all the praise that the supervisors had yesterday for the Area Agency on Aging and the Neighborhood and Community Services, the other county departments that have been, going above and beyond for the last, year and a half now almost for this. So congratulations to all of you. And I know, this change, this slowing down of the SHAPE process is, probably a little disappointing too in the AAA, but we're going to keep plugging away and we'll do what we can in the meantime. Kathy Coble.
Trina, I don't usually ask questions after the director's report, but I have one thought, and that is that, with the volunteers doing it, they kind of got to know the people, or at least the habits of the people they were delivering to. And I realized that they haven't been doing this for a year. But is the vendor a drop and run, or do they actually have some sense of whether the person is going to answer the door or what's happening there? And then I have another question for you.
Yes.
You don't even have to answer that. I'm just putting that out there.
Yes, the vendor does understand our model. Is actually, it's no secret because they won the award, but it's Jeffrey's Catering, and they have been working with us for several years. And so they're fully aware of this transition and what it really means, that volunteers aren't going to be seeing clients on a regular basis. Remember, we went from a 5-day model to a 3-day model to a 1-day model. So yes, the vendor is going to be still delivering just once a week, which is why we really want the volunteers to kind of fill in and try to be a meal buddy, or just start back up the socialization activities that they did before, which that just meant some were calling clients. That meant some went and visited once a week. So yeah, we're just, we're just starting that back up again. So we're hoping the volunteers will stick with us and move on to those new tasks to be able to spend more time with the client.
I have another, actually a request. In light of what Tom was talking about the community or the work kind of drifting without an action plan or something to work for, I was wondering if in Tara's next director's report, if we could have a sense of what the priorities and goals are for the AAA during this period. That would help focus us, and it would give us a sense. I know you guys are not sitting still. You guys are going to move forward. And if we know in what areas you are, I think that would help us. It would help us determine where we might need to look, because you're already looking there. We don't need to. I just think it would help us have some direction for the next at least 6 months to a year as we move without the discussion of SHAPE.
How can
Take
we
advantage of Tara not being here and asking her.
No, thank you for that. She actually already has it because we already have it. Like, we go over it with Michael Beckett, our director, and all, we work on it, look at future, we look at data. So it's already there. So I will just make sure that she presents it to you all.
Thank you.
We want to be supportive. So let us know how we can do that. Kay, quickly, because we got more things to get.
Quickly. Carolyn sent me the link to one of the sessions, and it had to do with the model where they do have the health coaches And I really got excited about the whole model. I think it's really the way to go. Instead of looking at the illness, you look at the total person and all the social and environmental aspects. Has the AAA in Fairfax thought about developing something like that with health coaches?
You know, we had talked about it, and it definitely requires some more attention because we do have in place now the options counseling that's required from the state. And so we have a licensed, a registered dietitian, we have our social workers, we started the families caregiver model. We've done things, but not officially about the health model. So I think we can kind of around it, but it's not official in that capacity. So yes, we will look at, we can look at that.
Have you been working with the Nova Health System?
Yep.
Because that's really where the collaboration has to occur.
Yes, we absolutely work with Inova. We still have ElderLink here with us. We absolutely, and even Inova is doing some different things. We just hired, I'm not sure if this has been mentioned, but we just hired an ElderLink director, or I should say Inova an ElderLink director, William. And so he's starting, I think this week or next. And
William Matthews is his name. I saw his name in the room.
William, yes, that might, yes.
The new ElderLink director.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an announcement.
So we're excited to work with him. He actually comes from our very own CSB. So he's familiar with our client.
Oh, excuse me, William Jin.
Jen, that's it.
William Jin. Okay, we're short of time. Jackie, we're gonna have to jettison something in the new business. So you wanna be our triage person here?
Yes, we can do this. So there are 3 items in your new business. I will quickly go over my 2 items. One, you saw that there is an amended remote participation policy that the county attorneys drafted. It's already been approved and blessed by the General Assembly and the county attorney, so this vote is a little bit of a formality for you all. I will tell you in 60 seconds an explanation for something that's a little bit complicated. What you are doing right now is called an electronic meeting. That is only allowable under the current law during the pandemic or the state of emergency. That hasn't been lifted yet locally. Okay, so once that is lifted locally, we will go back to the need for an in-person quorum with some people having the ability to meet remotely. The General Assembly has expanded the reasons and the numbers of times people can meet remotely. And basically it allows for some caregiving now. So we have never really used that option yet because you all wisely adopted a remote participation policy during the pandemic, but we haven't had the opportunity or need to use that. So we will need to take a vote on that. You could, if you want to, delay that to your next meeting because the board certainly won't lift that local order before your July meeting. That's up to you.
I think there may be more to discuss about it because reading through it, it appeared that it would not be possible to meet the requirements in our remote locations where we usually travel in libraries and district offices. There simply would not be the equipment to ensure that everybody would be able to hear each other the way we've been doing on this. That, using somebody's cell phone sitting on the table is not adequate for this process. So we have to investigate this a little bit further.
Yes, and that certainly can be discussed. I will tell you that won't likely be part of the official policy. That will be a scheduling logistic consideration, but I'm in agreement with you on that, Carolyn. But if you would like to.
Yeah, we could approve the policy, but we recognize that actually using it for people to be able to participate remotely may not be possible under our previous arrangements of meetings. So we'll have to see about that. Okay.
Agreed.
What else do you have for us? Are we going to
just very, very briefly, and again, this can be discussed in greater detail at your next meeting, the Human Services Issues Paper. You all may remember that every year the Board of Supervisors develops a legislative package Part of that package is the Human Services Issues paper, which covers the issues we all care about. There is an opportunity for both staff and boards to provide input on that paper. However, they are really, really discouraging any expansion of that paper. Basically, they want updates or, tightening of the language. So the staff have to input on that before you all do. Boards have to do that by August. I will tell you that, so we can discuss next time. Internally, we are not, at the request of the board, we are not suggesting a lot of changes, inclusion of some caregiver wording, so that caregivers are included in some of the prioritizations, some updated stats about adult protective services and older adult nutrition. But what I wanted to mention to you all for your consideration is that the healthcare, so that's the paper. Boards also have the opportunity to endorse a brand new position for consideration by the board in that paper. And the Healthcare Advisory Board would like to introduce a new position around nursing home staffing levels this year. And they have asked if the Commission on Aging and the LTCCC would like to join them in doing that. So I just want to make you all aware of that. Perhaps you want to vote on it. I am meeting with the staff from HCAB tomorrow to begin drafting this. As you all know, NVAN has this issue on its platform and has for many years. Our ombudsman program within our agency and at the state level also supports. So the Commission on Aging will need to determine whether or not you would like to join HCAB, and that the language hasn't yet been developed, but you all can determine whether you are in favor of that direction and partnership with them.
It seems a little vague to vote on at the moment. The fact that, we have been part of NVAN all these years, every year asking for, improvements in the staffing and the pay and the benefits and so forth. And, I don't think there's any question that we would support that. I just don't see how we can have a motion without some specific language, but can we get a sense of the group that we agree and we want to support the Healthcare Advisory Board in making this request? I'm seeing some heads nodding. Can we do a motion of that? We support the Healthcare Advisory Board initiative to include improvements in staffing for nursing homes in the Human Services Issues paper. What's the deadline on that? Is that
the beginning of August, the language has to be submitted.
okay?
So we can review exact language at your next meeting, but I want to be able to tell
So
HCAB.
do you want to vote now and say we agree to support them?
That's what I would like, yes, please.
And we're not going to change the language, we're going to agree. Okay, so we agree to support the Healthcare Advisory Board's inclusion of nursing home staffing and benefits and pay and in the next Human Services Issues paper.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to intrude with process, but I think we should probably have a second on that vote.
I'm calling for a second. Who wants to second it? Kay seconds it. All in favor, raise your hand, or say aye if we can hear you, but raise your hand otherwise.
Aye.
Aye.
And a nay?
I'm going to say nay because I don't really know the details of it, and it just puzzles me.
It's a very generic motion, but we have one negative vote. So we'll record that, but the motion carries.
That's all from me, Carolyn. Over to you for the slate, the officer election slate.
That's for you.
Oh, would you like me to? carry that?
I do not officially have it in front of me. I was not asked to deliver it. So I thought you were going to do it.
Well, I can do that. I'm very happy to do that. So as you know, at your June meeting, you all put forth an officer slate, and then at your July meeting, you vote on that slate. And the We have heard indication of interest for the position of chair, Kathy Cole, for the position of vice chair, Kathy Muha, and for the position of secretary, Carolyn Sutterfield. So those are the names we've heard of, interested in appearing on your officer election slate for next year to begin in September. Of course, anyone who would like to ask that they themselves be included on that slate or nominate someone else for that slate has the option to do so.
I will just say something quickly about this. I'm completing my 3rd year as chair, and I, would be entitled to run for a 4th year, but things have come up here in the city of Fairfax that I think are going to require a lot more of my attention. The city council has just approved a half-time position for senior support services in the Human Services Office. And the idea is to develop a village within the city kind of program, which will want to have a board of directors and volunteer organization that this person working with Leslie Bashian in Human Services will be the coordinator of volunteers, but there'll be a lot of work for people in the city to do in connection with the village. I think, the pandemic has shown a lot of my neighbors here, the need for this kind of connection and reaching out to people and letting them know that, there's a place they can call, there's folks who are looking out for them. We've been very disjointed in terms of our local neighborhoods, who the older people are and what kind of help they've needed. So this is the moment to do something more in the city of Fairfax. I will continue to be the city's representative on the commission, but I felt I should probably step back from the chairmanship to put a little more attention and effort into my own district. So thank you all for your support. It's been a pleasure doing this, and I'll say goodbye more formally next thing, but I certainly offer my wholehearted support to Kathy Cole and Kathy Muha, and I will do my best. I'm working on getting my hearing reassessed a little bit, do my best to be a good secretary. It's, as an editor, that's something I'm pretty confident I can do. So thank you. Oh, it's now 3 o'clock. We have time just for a moment for announcements. If anybody has any, you raise your hand if you have an announcement. Anybody on the commission? Anybody in the group? I just have one quick one myself. I just received today notice from Patty Klein of Rebuilding Together Arlington Fairfax Falls Church that they have scheduled a fall rebuilding day. Usually they do this in April, but they have now scheduled a day for Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, to assemble teams from different groups. And, it's all kinds of people who volunteer to help out with that and go into homes and fix problems of various kinds for folks older folks who need that help. So you can find out more at www.rebuildingtogether-aff.org. That's Rebuilding Together Arlington Fairfax Falls Church. And that's all I have for today. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Diane Watson makes that motion, and a second from Kay. All in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We are adjourned. Take care, everyone. See you in July.
Take care, everybody.